it's about decision making. It's about some problems that we have in, also in Slovenia, but I would expand them a little bit more to the European scene also. And you were discussing the European situation also. Let me first say that I will speak about spatial planning mostly, or more precisely landscape planning, because I'm landscape planner. And the problems that I am going to explain to you are maybe they can be expanded and to the whole environmental conservation area. First, I'm going to disclose some the environmental conservation as not a unique activity, which is many times taken as a unique. That's one thing. The second thing, that I'm going to speak about two basic approaches that we meet mostly in landscape or in landscape planning. And then I will say some words about democracy, which I think still we have to preserve within environmental conservation. So my first question is, let's say, rather a question about the democracy. Sometimes you can hear a, let's say, a statement that maybe if we want to conserve our environment, we must not rely too much on democracy, because democratic decisions are, let's say, if democracy is real, then the decisions are taken by many, and some more powerful social groups may prevail, and then we are losing the qualities of our environment. Once I was, many years ago, in one discussion, our doctors of medicine organized a discussion on environmental problems, and some said, well, we in such a situation now, and that was maybe 15 years ago, we are in such a situation that even science must not be obeyed completely, and that we have to leave this old traditional way of positivistic science, and we have to think in a different way because we have to save our planet and we have to resolve all the problems of our environment. Well, first of all, I think that still science, if science gives not the right answers to the questions that we have, then we have to think still on a scientific way to change the science or to improve the science. And so it is also with democracy. I think that if democracy doesn't work in resolving environmental problems, then we must not say, leave science apart and use another way of making decisions. But I think that we have to develop, to further develop, and maybe to make best basis foundations, or best basis for the decision-making process, also scientific, and also bringing together people as broad, let's say, audience or general public as possible. So I already answered to the question, and I have here written, are experts those to whom decisions should be left? I think not. And I heard before, and I fully agree, that the scientist must not take decisions. And the scientist must prepare an adequate base on which then the decisions can be taken. And I think that we have, at least in Slovenia, we have a situation where these science experts have to take decisions is really flourishing. And those experts are mostly state administration. And suddenly we have a situation where the bureaucrats and public administrators are in fact behind decisions, and it's up to them to decide what to do. And I'm afraid that this situation is not only Slovenian situation, but it's also European situation. After our entrance to the European Union, there were no changes in this respect. just contrary. I think that even more power has been given to the public administrators, say experts who are working within the government. Well, first of all, I would like to make I will define three different conflicting situations that are in our environment. First conflicting situation is within us, that we are living at the moment on our planet. And those are, let's say, the majority of pollution problems that we face today. The second conflicting situation, it's a conflict between us today, man, and future generation. And that is mostly the question of resources. We are using too much resources, and we will not leave resources to the generations that are coming. And so that is a conflict between us and the future generation. And the third conflict, which is often we mix with the old environmental problems, is the conflict between man and nature. We cannot say man and man, because nature must not be in some way instrumentalized, so that in fact in that case, when nature is instrumentalized, then it's of course question between man and man. But if you take nature as this entity that is outside of our interests, then the conflict is different and can be differently defined. Okay, sorry. Well, just to mention this pollution problem, a very good, let's say, explanation of that conflict is Gareth Hardin, The Tragedy of Commons. I'm sure you know that. That is very popular, very known text, in which he explains a situation where a shepherd has a herd of sheep, and then he thinks about making his life more productive. So he's thinking about adding one sheep to his herd. Of course, on the common pasture, there is an equilibrium, and that an additional sheep may make a disequilibrium, may go over the carrying capacity of the meadow, of the pasture, and therefore, of course, he makes damage to other people. And that's more or less the metaphor for all pollution problems. Somebody gains some profit and other people are losing. In that sense, in fact, the pollution can be defined as something that it makes profit to individuals or to smaller groups, but the general public has, let's say, is damaged, and their, let's say, their qualities of life are damaged through that. Well, about conservation of resources, of course, it's a long endeavor. Thinking about the resources, a long endeavor to save them for the future generation, and also the term sustainability is mostly based on that. I think that term sustainability, as it is used, at least in this country, means in fact save resources for other people. It's of course something that can be also in favor for us, for the people that are today on the planet, but generally it is always a question of future generation, because today our resources are saved for us, are saved by the economic market, let's say, mechanisms that in fact make value to the resources, today value. But of course, when we think about the future, we have no possibility to evaluate what will be the value in the future, so we have to protect them in a different way. But of course, there is a problem whether we'll know today what will be the lifestyle of future generation and what will be the needs of future generations. So it's always some guess about, and we are uncertain about the correctness of our endeavor to save resources. Of course, it's a question, again, of democracy, and sustainability seems to be some problem about that. It has some problem about that, because you have to convince other people that they have to think about future generation. If you convince a majority of people through different ways that are used in environmental conservation, like education, NGOs, organizing, let's say, general public into different interest groups and so on, so you may also make base for the decisions here also in a democratic way. But of course, you must have a public acceptance of that rules. About the nature, we may say that there is a lot of thinking about what is the let's say base for nature conservation. If I'm going through the criteria that were used in this country for defining natural heritage, then we would see that the criteria changed very much through time. First, in the first criteria that has been established somewhere in the late 60s, in the beginning of 70s, those criteria were very much on the base of instrumentalization of nature, like the beauty, uniqueness, recreational potential of natural values and so on. Later they evolved very much into less, let's say, instrumentalized values, instrumentalized nature to the real nature of value, like what is the importance of some feature in the nature for the ecosystem, for the equilibrium of ecosystem. Today it seems to me that is the major criterion, at least in this country, is biodiversity, which is again maybe questionable because it brings definitions of what should be conserved to some very unlogic situations. So in the name of nature conservation, we conserve, let's say, some agricultural lands, which is, if we are thinking very purely, it's very unlogic. Why not to allow nature to make a habitat or an ecosystem like it likes to do? In fact, we are now dictating, so to say, to the nature what is an optimal ecosystem for the nature. So such illogical things can be also derived from two, let's say, two simplified criteria that are used. Of course, there is a major question, of course, whether we are part of the nature. Human beings are also biological beings, or we are not, and that's very important. And I would here stress the quote, philosopher Paul Taylor, who said, the question, how should human culture fit into the order of nature, is not a question of biological fact. That means that the scientists even cannot prepare a real base for the decision making. Sometimes a biological fact is taken as a decision. At least in this country, our scientists from the biology are just discovering something, some feature in the nature, and then they say, well, this has to be protected. But the protection is not a scientific thing. It's not a matter of the science. Protection is action. And action is something that we have to prepare, and that we have to decide upon it, and that we have to be, that everybody has to be convinced that such an action is something that he agrees with. So it's a really question of democracy in that sense, when the scientific facts are directly transferred into the decisions, or at least to the base for a decision. between the scientific fact and between a, let's say, base for the decision. It's a chain of different activities that planners know and that you have to go through. You have to first evaluate what such fact means for different goals. So we have different goals, and if each goal may give a different value to some scientific fact. And of course, then, if we go through this first evaluation process, of course, it's very important to predict what will be. And the prediction is, again, something that the scientist can tell you, because he knows the process, he knows the theory, and on the basis of theory, he can say, that will be in the future, that and that. But again, in the future will be that and that. But what is the value of that will be in the future is, again, something that you have to find a way to evaluate that. And of course, evaluate on the basis of different goals, because the goals and values are very much connected. Or sometimes they are the same. Oh, sorry. Well, I'm going to these two types of decision-making process, and I see that I have to speed a little bit up my lecture, not to lose too much time. In fact, I just go to two types that they are not my discovery. In fact, a late professor, Herbert Simon, Nobel Prize winner, said we have two types of decision-making, which is, one is, at least not that we, but he said the managers, they have two possibilities. Or to make some standardized, to take some standardized decisions, or to make a thorough analysis, go through all the data that are available, and then on the basis of the analysis, take decision. And in fact, we have the same in environmental planning. So what is the standard? I'm not going to repeat. Standard is a very important feature very important feature in technique, in technologies, because it enables what is written here, that some interchangeability can be realized can be implemented in different solutions. But in fact, what are standards? Standards are just partial solutions. That are small solutions. As we say, I need in my house, I'm building a house, I need I don't know, the pipes. The pipes are standardized, and the planners or designers are not going to calculate, to analyze what will be the measure of the pipe. He just goes to the shop and see what type of pipes are available. They are standardized, and then he said, well, I will use this one or that one, and so on. So standardization is very important. But in fact, the standards are solutions, are partial solutions, solutions of a very small part of the whole problem, design problem. Of course, we have the same as the norms. Environmental norms are, in fact, solutions, because we say, in this area, we must not allow that and that level of noise. That's solution. We are not going to analyze what type of people we do have there, whether they are very sensitive to the noise or not sensitive to the noise. We just take something that has been agreed in advance. So in fact, norms are not something that is scientifically proved, but it's something that was agreed in advance. The solution was then set, that is that solution, and then, of course, it is taken as something that is, what is important is that solutions, the solutions are, first of all, a minimum of conservation. It seems very strange, but it is so. The norms are always some minimum that will prevent too much damage in the environment. In fact, the environmental requests are always can be very, very absolute. That means that nothing has to be changed in some environment. But of course, we will change because we develop, because we live in the environment. So we are changing the environment. And the norms just say that is the maximum level that is permitted, the maximum change. That means from the other side that there are minimal requirements, environmental requirements. And that means that then they tend to increase by passing the time. So they are tending to increase, and norms are increasing always. That's one thing. The second thing, they are more severe in richer societies. And we know today, world situation, the undeveloped world is accepting everything, is polluting their environment. So that's because we are now transferring the polluting industries or dirty activities to the lands where they are not so sensitive for environmental quality. And in fact, as norms are always defined as something that can be measured, then they give us an impression that the decision is up to experts. Because of course decision must be such as the norm says. And of course the experts are measuring the change of the environment. And so experts say, well, that's above or that's under the level that is prescribed. And so the decision is taken by the expert. And here I see the possibility that we mix this problem of expert decision from one side and democratic decision from the other side. As I said, also norms are predefined solution. It seems strange to say that the level is a solution, but in fact it is. Of course, solution may be the protecting fence along the road to prevent the noise pollution. But nevertheless, it is solution because we are not analyzing what will be the acceptable level in a certain situation. We just take the level that has been prescribed. Just to prove what I said before, for example, here we have the development of a norm for radioactive radiation from 92 till 1973, and we can see that the norms are becoming more severe and more severe. It's not only a question of awareness about the environment, it's not only a question of, let's say, wealth, it's not only a question of our possibilities to get, but it's of course also a question of knowledge. And here it's obvious that the knowledge was influencing very much the norms for the radioactive protection. But the same can we see here. It's a little bit old example. We could find some better examples. But of course we can see how is the development or how is the evolution, better to say, evolution of the standards for emissions from cars, so traffic emissions in the United States. And also we can see difference between the whole United States and the California. The California is the most advanced and most rich state within the United States. Of course, has much, or used to have much stronger, much more severe restrictions than other states within the United States. And of course, also the federal states are changing by time. And we may also now, I'm going to the spatial planning, or let's say landscape planning, and we can see that the protected areas like natural protection areas or other water protected areas and similar are also standards. They have the same characteristics as other environmental standards. They represent decisions about the land use, so they are solutions. Of course, they are predefined. Why predefined? Because when we protect some zone, some area in the, some smaller area in a bigger area within the country, at that time we make a prescription for land use in, of course, that part of land. Of course, that solution is not a complete solution because that's only one interest behind that decision. But of course, in this country, those decisions are final because when some, for example, Nature Conservation Agency goes with a proposal to make some reservation, then they go through the different bodies like Slovenian Parliament or the council on the municipality level, municipal council. They go through not considering, let's say, the planning process. So they go just, how to say, parallelly to the planning. The planning in this country is, let's say, each 10 years, or maybe also different, but let's say more or less each 10 years we renew spatial plans. But the process of making, let's say, making reservations is just outside of that process. It used to be part of that process, but it was in 67, so early. It was part of the planning process. So the declaration or the definition of protected zones were part of the spatial planning process. After that date, the two processes just fell apart, so to say. They just started to go parallelly because, of course, there was a tendency to, or say, there was a fear that within the planning process, the conservation will not succeed. So they were afraid of, let's say, fighting of different interests, and so it was separated, this process, from that. And let me say that the same characteristics I mentioned for the protected zones as I mentioned for the environmental norms. We can see here the history of our Triglav National Park. The idea started in 1908, but in 1981, the surface of 83,807 hectares was defined. But that was not the end of the story, no? Because in March 1999, there was 8% of national territory under some type of nature conservation. But in our newspaper, here is the title, which says, it seems that it is not more utopia that the third of Slovenia will be national park. So at that time already was an idea to have 1/3 of Slovenia covered with a national park. And then we have this famous Nature 2000 when we started our European age. And then we have these zones. Those are the zones defined after two directives, so-called Habitat Directive and Birds Directive. And that is quite 40% of Slovenia. Here I have exact data. And you can see here, Slovenia is this one. And here we have, that is for birds protection after Bird Directive 23. And then we have Habitat Directive 31. And altogether makes more than 36, because they are overlapping, of course. Both zones are overlapping. So both have more than 36. And of course, you can read in newspapers quite every day that this is not enough and that we have to even expand that. And even the European Union said that we have to protect that, and so that's not enough. Of course, it's not enough, because nature is on 100% of Slovenian national territory. Nature is everywhere, even in this hall here is nature. And even in this hall, we could think about some nature conservation. And of course, it's not enough, because we should have 100% of national territory under some kind of protection. But the question is whether the tool that we use for nature conservation is inadequate. And so we have very much conflicts and disputes like this one for the wind generators in close to the southern part of Slovenia, where the winds are not really very favorable for making those wind generators. But the conflict is not based on that, whether it's let's say, reasonable to make these wind generations or not, but it's a question whether we can or cannot disturb natural species that are here. And so, of course, you will always have something that will be disturbed, because, as I said, nature is everywhere, and the conflict cannot be resolved in that way. And we have similar situation, as I explained to you now, with the nature conservation we have in other sectors. And here we have this problem of conservation of resources, because agriculture also protects some resources. And also agriculture is thinking about spatial protection, protection of space. And then we have forestry. And foresters also say, oh, we have some special forests, they have to be protected. That should be protected for the future generation. And then we have the same with water management, because water managers say, well, the water is the resource of the future. It is the most important resource. So we have to protect. And so everybody now goes to the space and tries to protect it in advance. Try to protect it like environmental norms, and try to protect it just by himself, so to say, no? Or itself. No? And of course, what is important in this country at least is that all those definitions, protecting definitions, are mandatory for special planners. So the special planners can be, so to say, can think about some solutions for a new development, for a new activities that are in space, only on the areas that are not under some type of protection. It may be a little easier to speak to agriculturists or to speak to foresters. It's very difficult to speak to nature conservationists, because nature conservationists are very tough. They are very strong in protecting the qualities, and in fact they do not think about some optimization, saying, well, let's see what are your needs and then find an optimal solution. Just to explain to you, those are agricultural lands. The red means a protected area, means a conservation zones for agriculture. Those are zones that shouldn't be used for any other. And black are also the same because they are vineyards and orchards. They are just another, they fell, let's say, so to say, under another criteria. But of course, that's are all protected zones. But that's quite the whole agricultural land in this country. There is no other land, agricultural land. And the same is with forests. Now, of course, the productive forests are not strictly protected, but others are. What's about optimization? So I will say that even today, our nature conservation is discovered that they cannot really be so restrict in conserving so huge Slovenian territory and national territory. So they proposed, and in fact it's also legalized now, a special impact assessment for nature conservation, for Nature 2000, for Natura 2000 areas, and for other conserved areas. I have last 2 years, we were working on a case study I'm going to explain later, and we discovered that nature conservationists are, as I said, very, very restricted. They have that the only discussion can be said only, yes, you may go to this area, but you then have to provide a substitutional habitat or Ersatzhabitat, something that where what you have damaged here, you have destroyed here, you have to reconstruct somewhere else. That is the only way, that's the only possibility to make an optimization on decision making. So it's again, it's a very typical situation that the experts, scientists know where is some quality, but they don't know how to evaluate that quality. And because they don't know how to evaluate that quality, they just say that quality is intrinsic value, has intrinsic value, and about intrinsic values we are not going to discuss. And that's a problem. I'm going to very briefly, because I have to finish in 8 minutes, very briefly to a project which is similar. I'm going later to explain a little more in detail. Where we can, in a planning situation, we can have two types of optimization. We can bring optimization into two, let's say, steps of a planning process. First step is here that we call it land use suitability, which can be divided according to different goals to different types of analysis. Like here we have attractiveness and vulnerability, which are, at least we use that term, and we divide our analytical process normally in always two separate parallel processes. One is we search for the best possible locations for a certain activity, and from the other side we search for the vulnerable places where that activities can make some environmental damage or environmental impact. And then from that we define comprehensive land use plan. But of course then we have another optimization procedure which is called environmental impact assessment, and that environmental impact assessment is in fact optimization of more different plans, solutions, proposals, and to in fact evaluate which of the proposals is better fits to the environmental conservation requirements or worse. Well, I'm not going through this whole process. Of course, such planning starts from some analyzing of the existing situation, social as well as physical situation. Of course, that was a small village here in the vicinity of Ljubljana, and we wanted to see how the people perceive their municipality, whether it is already urban or it is still farmers' village or is maybe craftsmen and so on. And we also asked farmers how they see their future, whether they have idea to go on with their farming or they will expand or they will leave farming activity in the future. So of course it was expected that the farmers who have more land also see future in farming, but of course there is not enough land for all wishes. So much more farmers want to farm than there is land, because they know that they have to be big farmers to go on with farming practices, but of course there is not enough land. So the lack of agricultural land is a real problem in this country. Yes, in this country, but in this municipality was a real problem. So the conservation of farming land is not important only for the future generation, but in this municipality was important also for the existing situation. Well, just briefly through some data, I'm not going to say all. We, of course, asked also people where they think that some location should be, where to locate different activities. For example, that was people's preferences where they want to have small industry. So at the beginning of the planning, we asked people where they want to have different activities. Like also we asked them where they want to protect something, to have some protection. Environmental conservation or nature conservation, better to say. And of course, that was also a starting point to understand which criteria the people would use to develop their municipality. What are criteria behind those? Because that's summarized, or how to say, synthesized idea. I want to have small industry here. But of course, we then may go to the data and see whether that locations that people defined as preferred location are close to existing houses, are far from existing houses, are close to roads, are far from roads, are in the forested area or are outside of forested area, are on better agricultural land, on worse agricultural land. So from such analysis, you could get out criteria that in some way are expressed by people through public interview, of course. And then you start to make this evaluation. I said landscape evaluation. That was for agriculture, and bioagriculture was an activity, large-scale agriculture and replacement of farms. So the new farms, that the farms should move from a village, old village, to some other location. And through this you can see where is the best possibility, where is the best land to have that activity, like bioagriculture, large-scale agriculture, or new farms. And the same you can make also with industry, with the shopping centers, with the housing areas, and so on and so on. And of course, from other side, you say, well, where these activities can make damage. And that was, again, vulnerability for agriculture. And vulnerability because of biosphere qualities, because of hydrosphere qualities, because of qualities of human environment. You must know that people here are living urban way of life. We asked them before. And of course, the agriculture and can produce some pollution and pleasant side effects also for the urban life. So it's also very important to understand that where you may find a conflict with those activities. And finally, it's a suitability. That means that we make a synthesis of, let's say, environmental conservation requirements and requirements of those activities that have been planned. And of course, that is the starting point to make a discussion, because now we may speak about criteria, we may speak about the potential locations, not still located areas, but potential locations. And the people can express, can criticize, and in fact, in this situation that was we organized a workshop in this Comenda municipality, and it was surprisingly that people were very much informed about maps, about criteria and so on, so the discussion was quite okay. Also farmers were very much discussing. So maybe Comenda is much more developed than other villages in Slovenia, but in this case we were surprised about the intensity with which the people were engaged in discussing those questions that were before the plan, and then development of plan, of course, which can be in alternatives, following, because as you could see, here maybe very, very many alternatives produced. Those are all locations that different people think about as the optimal for a small industry. Of course, in that way you can also produce a comprehensive plan on the basis of these different expectations of people. And just to finish, it's also prescribed by law here in Slovenia that all municipality plans go through environmental impact assessment. It is in fact strategic environmental impact assessment, and I propose here a way how to use the same models we defined before, mostly vulnerability models, to go through plans and to see, because of course you may do a suitability analysis bringing together already conservation requirements and of course needs of different activities. But you cannot do ideally, and of course then you may still have differences in different alternative plans, whether they are better or worse. And you can again start the discussion on the alternatives, plan alternatives. Just to add, this process or this method is not prescribed by law. It is allowed. The law says yes, you can use also that type of vulnerability study, but it's not prescribed because the impact assessment may be also done very simply simplified, just with some expert judgment. Thank you very much. Questions? Yeah. I already went very shortly through a case study. I mentioned municipality Komenda, which is on the northern side of Ljubljana, still within a, let's say, broader Ljubljana region. And now I'm going to explain a little bit about the same problems as I already was talking about on the another case study, that is planning of municipality Ig. Municipality is very close to Ljubljana, as you can see. Ljubljana is here, and this municipality, you see those are borders of municipality, and here is the biggest village, let's say that, because we have very small municipality, and that's more or less a village named Ig, just 2 letters. And the municipality is partly situated on Ljubljana Marsh, which is this one, Ljubljana Marsh. It's a marshy land that has been reclaimed 30, 40 years ago, 400 years ago has been reclaimed, but always there was a process of reclamation because they reclaimed first time and then the floods started again and then reclaimed another time, and so every time was some kind of reclamation. But still it's quite a, let's say, marshy, and therefore it's also a subject of nature conservation. Partly is the municipality in these mountains here. It's a more or less forested area, and here they have some problems with problems. Here is, let's say, pressure for development, mostly second homes, but because of the vicinity of Ljubljana, that second home development gradually changes into a normal housing areas. So it's something that is some process that has started some, let's say, 40 years ago in Slovenia, and then mostly the second homes that are close to Ljubljana just changed into the have changed into the to the housing area. Well, there are some places for recreation, because here is a gorge and very interesting place for the recreation, and still active agriculture. But the majority of agriculture in this area here, which is not marshy, but is under the, here is one of the Ljubljanas aquifers. So it's here are wells for Ljubljana and the water zone. And of course there are some institutions, industry is quite existent. But they used to be first part of Ljubljana municipality, then they were part of one of the Ljubljana municipalities, because in a certain time Ljubljana was divided into more municipalities, and these surrounding areas were integrated with those municipalities. And now they are a self-standing municipality, and of course they have also problems because the only development is housing, and the people are moving, who are working in Ljubljana, they are pendlers, are moving, are making homes here, and then so they are just going to Ljubljana and back, mostly by cars. So even the public transportation is not well organized, and the mayor of the municipality, and because also his political party, they want to make something from that village. So they have some ideas to develop this village and to make something. That's something that is very normal here in our municipalities. Also in Komenda was so the mayor wanted to bring something. So the mayor in Komenda brought a huge storage homes, storage houses of Lidl international firm. So they took down some 200 hectares of forest and made a center for Lidl shops, of the distribution center for Lidl shops. And so here also this mayor wants to develop something. Of course, there is a problem they already mentioned. Those are water protecting zones, and you can see here is the municipality. So quite whole municipality is under protection because of water. And here is most severe protected, those are wells. and here is more severe protected. But of course, also those are protected zones. Agriculture. And we have also, as I mentioned already, those are all protection in advance. The spatial planners have to take those zones and respect them. Maybe agriculture at the moment is not so severely protected. It used to be before, now it's a little bit weakened, but still water protection is very severe and nature protection is also very severe. So there are other agricultural zones that are not so important for agriculture where some development can, of course, occur. Why? Because, of course, that's not interest of agriculture. But those black, green, or dark green, sorry, dark green are, and those whites are, of course, forests or already built up areas, villages, houses, and so on. And here we have forest reserves as protective forests. Protective forests in this country are forests that are mainly, they protect soil, so against erosion, or maybe also some other reason, but mostly from the majority of those protective forests are. This one, of course, is not on erodible land. It's in the flat land, but it's kind of an old forest that escaped reclamation works or was planted in some way, and today it's very highly valued. And here we have nature conservation, only Natura 2000. So not to speak about 5% that Europe prescribes, not to speak about 10 or 15% as much as, I don't know, Austria, 16% or something like that. We have in Slovenia 36%, or quite 40%. Here in this municipality, they have 83% of municipality territory that is covered by Natura 2000. And you can see here, those are SPA bird directive, and this one is a habitat directive. Why such huge zones? Because the whole, this Ljubljana marsh was covered by Natura 2000, just so, with one, let's say, one move. And here is a part of the area that is area of big predators, as it is called, bears, wolves, lynx, those are three main animals that are protected. But it's not only this, because we still have some ecological important areas that are not Nature 2000, but are again protected. And here are some, Ljubljana marsh is ecologically important area. This is some Menicia, Menicia, this one also important, and this area are important. And so you have very, very small areas of white where it's left to spatial planners for further development. And the mayor of Ig, he wants to make something for his village. You see, that's the problem. The mayor and the people down in Ig, they want to have something. They also want to have, well, in fact, their major idea was to have a horse race track, hippodrome. And because they want to, they have an idea to develop more the horse activities connected to the horses, because they have already the tradition, and it is close to the sea, to Ljubljana, and Ljubljana has a lot of lovers of horses, and they have, of course, their horses there. They have, some farmers even make money by taking care of horses from Ljubljana people. And of course, because horses are now something that is, let's say, kind of fashion, and maybe will remain fashion, so they want to base some their activity and to make this Ig, this village, known through horses, so to find some identity of village. And I don't know whether that is not the right of the people that are living there. They create something that will be something for them, that they will identify with that, and that will, I don't know, that will bring something positive to their living conditions there. It's not industry, but again, it's a problem because they changed and then we have so-called intrinsic values, again, because it's not only Natura 2000, it's not only ecologically important areas, but are also old, as we call them, nature heritage. Today, in Slovenia, we don't say more heritage, we call them intrinsic values, so that are values that are so important that we have not to touch them. And again, we have a lot of them here in this area. You see the same forest that has been declared as a protected forest is also a natural value. And then we have also cultural heritage. Why this area? Because of the nice landscape. What does it mean? Not very much, but it means that the people from the Ministry of Culture can say yes or no for any development. And they have control over the planning. That is a problem. It's not just a problem that you must not do anything there. But who will decide about what is going to be there? Are people, experts from the Ministry of Culture. And that is the problem with those areas. And then we may see even that the conflicts are between all those different protecting activities. For example, agricultural land, definition of agriculture land doesn't mean that the farmers are controlled in their activities. The farmers may use more modern technologies, they may use fertilizers and so on, because that's the progress of agriculture. But in the same time, these areas here are on the water protection zone, and their fertilizers are not allowed. But again, it's the only, let's say, suitable land, in fact, although these areas are broader, but the best lands are here on this protection zone. And the farmers who want to develop, to, let's say, to remain farmers and to modernize themselves, they are not allowed to do that because of this water protected zone. But it's not only this, you see, the same area is also natural value. And so we have overlapping on the same piece of land, we have different protection or conservation interests. And they are different in explanation of what to conserve and what is the way of conserving the land. So they are not conserving the status what it is, but they are conserving different aspects of that area. For example, agriculture is protecting land, so not to use for other uses. Water protection is protecting water, underground water, but underground water is protected through activities that are on the surface, and the same is with nature conservation. Nature conservation normally starts from the existing situation, what it is on the land. And that is the definition of what they want to protect. And the same you say with cultural monuments, and the same you have with forests, and of course Natura 2000. So they are just going, of course, there are no conflicts between Natura 2000 and natural values and ecologically important zones, because they are more or less protecting the same quality of land. But water protection zone is not protecting the same quality, and agriculture is not protecting the same quality, and even forest is not protecting the same quality. And then we have plan. That was the first proposal for plan, so I have not the last plan that has been proposed. And here we have a different, those are green spaces. So also plan provided these two forested areas in the Ljubljana Marsh to be protected. But that is airport, for example. It was a proposal to make a small sport airport. In fact, Ljubljana used to have an airport which was a sport and passengers airport, but then when they made a new airport close to Ljubljana, then this was closed down, but the sport flying activities couldn't be taking place on the new airports. So they want to have some airport here close to Ljubljana. And there is a need for such airport. But of course that airport will not be part of a plan. It was already dropped out because the nature conservation was against. But what will be the, let's say, the result of that? There is a man here in Ljubljana who was for many years pilot at aerospace, European producer. He was a top pilot there, giving instructions all over the world. And of course, he was very well paid. And he now owns 3 or 4 airplanes, small airplanes, because he loves to fly still, although he's retired now. He likes to fly. And he, of course, made, not in this municipality, but in the neighboring municipality, he made some illegal airport. Well, just a landing and taking off trace, not very much built, and so he then goes to the other sport airports to make his activities there. But he has his hangar for those 4 airplanes, he has close to his home, here close to Ljubljana. So what is then the result if you are against and you do not think about solving the problem? The problem is that Ljubljana needs an airport. And that should be the starting point. You think not. Yeah, of course, but then you must say who will decide what is allowed to do and what is not allowed to do.
For sure not the white man with his 4 airplanes. For sure he cannot decide.
Yeah, but he's not the only one. He's not the only one. There is much more people who would like to have a sport activities. It's another problem is our balloons. There is some firms here in Ljubljana that make a tourist money through ballooning, taking tourists with balloons. Today, this morning, there were 2 or 3 balloons in the air. And so it's unregulated. And it's worse than to have a place where they could have their balloons, where they start with ballooning. It would be much better to have these things organized. Otherwise, the things are going just illegally uncontrolled. Of course, I mentioned that man just to explain to you that there are some such needs that then the things are going on just illegally. And we have these experiences in this country with illegal housing, very much experiences. Because people, I don't know, some 40, 50 years ago, it was politically not really acceptable to have individual house. It was much more, you see, to have blocks of apartments. After that, but the people, they wanted to have houses. And so it was very common to have a legal house. Yes, please.
Yeah, but what's the solution? There must be a solution. Because you will always have this problem. Like, on the one side, you try to protect nature. On the other side, there should be areas for development. Like, what's the solution?
Yeah, I will try to explain, to answer to your question, going through my slides. Okay. And now we have conflicts. Conflicts between, for example, agriculture and housing. So the planners who prepared this plan, of course, they expanded. That's normal way of development in this country, just expansion of existing development. It's quite a problem in Slovenia. Why? Because the old villages were all built on bad land, on land that was not really suitable for agriculture. But it is close to best agricultural land. So by expansion, the houses are going to the best agricultural land. And that's the main reason why the agricultural land was protected in Slovenia, just because of that process. But just to say, what is that? What is priority? Priority houses? What is multifunctionality? Once we talked with professor of crop production in our faculty, he's already retired, Spanring, and he said, oh, well, but in many countries they have on the roofs, they have productive lands. Well, it may be a solution, but maybe not a solution that can be used here. So multifunctionality doesn't work with agriculture. Let's say housing and agriculture. And then we have a Natura 2000 conflicts. Again, black means conflicts. And of course, the Natura 2000 already was, in some way, the borders took out from the Natura 2000 when they traced the borders. They took already built up areas out of the Natura 2000. Therefore, conflicts are not so severe. But here are conflicts, Natura 2000, with other uses. And then we have again some, you see that's airport, and here we have some smaller problems. Of course, you say, well, there are not so many conflicts. But when you are in a real situation, then you start to negotiation to speak about, and our nature conservationists are very strong on their borders. They just say, well, those are borders, those are now legalized, they are protected under law, and you cannot just do. Okay. Let's see what can be a possible solution. A possible solution would be to not be too strict with the conservation. If we say those are natural values, intrinsic values, is really the whole area so very much important that you have to strictly conserve all the area? And why this quality finishes here? Why is the finish of the quality here, just here? Are there no qualities outside of that area? Yes, they are, they will say, the nature conservation. But somewhere you have finished. But why to finish? Why not to have a picture of the qualities in that way, that you have a gradual, better, worse picture of the whole situation? Like here. And this picture has been produced by taking criteria that were used for defining intrinsic values. And why say intrinsic? Why not to say just values? Values can be higher and can be lower. And that way you will gain some space for optimization or for negotiation. Going further, you may produce more. For example, natural values, naturalness, here was defined through some kind of model. That is a picture of the model using different data that represent some quality of the land. For example, I don't know, the type of vegetation, the type of soil, the closeness to the village or distance to the village, distance to the roads, I don't know, slope, orientation, different data that you may, through those data, you may then prepare some kind of picture of values. And here are 3 different pictures of values. Even that you can do, to have more severe conservation attitude and less severe. So just to make the values are our product. The values are not product of nature. We define values. And because we define values, therefore we can change those values. And we can even try to make a different evaluation criteria, or let's say level of restrictiveness, and then see what we will gain. And have then space for the discussion and say, well, maybe we have to conserve much more. And then finally you get out with a decision that they say, well, the airport cannot be in the Ljubljana Marsh. But after some kind of let's say, of discussion where you explore all the alternatives that you have. From the other side, of course, you mentioned that. From the other side, you may also make criteria not only for the conservation, but also criteria for best location for airport. My objection to this airport in Ljubljana Marsh is that it should be somewhere close to Ljubljana. Why just in that municipality? So municipality is not the correct area to evaluate the best location for airport. So airport may be better located in the northern side of Ljubljana, not in southern part. But that we have to analyze first to see. So the problem of Ljubljana airport, a sport airport, is not problem of municipality, each municipality, but it's a problem of region of Ljubljana. So it's very much important that also you define differently the area in which you are analyzing the potentials of the space, also for conservation. And here, of course, that's criteria for housing, where the housing would be best. And then you can bring them together. So this is attractiveness for housing, this one, and this is vulnerability for housing, where the housing shouldn't be. Of course, here shouldn't be because it's very dark green. And here can be because it's white. And we have not just green or white, but we have different intensities of green. And that is what we have, in fact, in space. The values are not black and white. Black and white values, yes or no, are not values. They are decisions. Decisions are always black and white. You can only take one thing, and you have to decide. Therefore, black and white are always decisions. Values are always hierarchical. They may be on the positive side, on the negative side, and that's important that you do, that you have here. For example, for housing, it's darker means more positive. This white zones means less attractive. And here you have dark green means more vulnerable, less suitable for housing, and white means suitable for housing. And therefore, you can then produce locations for your activity by using this. And here just to have more closer look to the same area, that is municipality Ig, and then we have this land uses that I already mentioned, and then the Natura 2000 situation with the conflicts, and this resolving of conflicts is impossible here. And in fact, in reality was that here was planned I already mentioned this horse race track, and it was planned over an area that is protected because one butterfly. It's one rare butterfly in Uganda marsh. And because of that butterfly, the nature conservationists were against that horse race track. But there was no possibility to negotiate even 10 meters, you know. It was very, very severely. They stand on the fact that even 10 meters must not be. The things went so far, even that there was a specialist of that butterfly. And I asked him, that was a meeting, and I asked him, what would be distance of the impacts from the horse track to those butterflies? And he said, those butterflies are very stable. They don't fly very far. So we said, let's say 50 meters would be the maximum, let's say some kind of buffer zone to protect those butterflies. But because there is in our law is written that buffer zones along nature conservation zones must be 500 meters, they insisted on 500 meters. Although it was not let's say, proved by the ecology of the butterfly. So it is, and therefore this conflict went to the ministry, and now it's up to the ministry and the people of the ministry to say whether horse track will be allowed or not. So the horse track is still questionable because the planners couldn't do other way. It was the only possibility to make this horse race track in that way. And now the plan went to the ministry, still is in processing, so the whole story is not yet finished, but we will see. But now we have this decision in hands of the ministry, of the people of the ministry. Of course the government will decide, because the government will say yes or no for the spatial plan. But of course the government will not go deeper into the whole, they have no time. And they will say what the people, the administrators of the ministry will suggest. So it's up to the minister, up to the people of the ministry to say yes or no, because there was not a possibility to make a democratic discussion at the local level. And here we have the same situation when you use values instead of black and white decisions or protected zones, as I mentioned. Thank you very much.